At this point, we have a pretty good knowledge of some HTML tags, and we just had a pretty good overview of the most common HTML5 tags in the past lecture. And so now what we're going to do is a little HTML5 project. We're just going to be coding kind of what we already just did in the last lecture. It should look a little something like this. It's just basically a semantic HTML5 document. It's kind of presented as a blog in a sense. So we have a header up here with a navigation. We have an article. We actually have two articles. And we're using HTML5 in those articles to section out each of the components in the blog post. And then we have a sidebar and then a footer with some small text. And we're basically just gonna jump in and code that. So if you want, you can feel free to code your own HTML5 website. You don't have to follow along at all. This is merely a practice with what we know. But you're most certainly welcome to follow along and code this HTML5 website. Okay, so go ahead and create a file in your HTML folder called html5_project.html. Add your basic structure and add the title up here. And then we're going to start off. I'm actually going to do something a little different this time. I'm going to first map out what we're going to code by using comments to keep everything kind of organized. So let's start out by adding a header comment. So that's going to be where the header is going to go. We're going to put it under there. And then we're going to keep moving down here. And then next, I'm going to actually have the blog articles. Then after that, we'll have the sidebar and then the footer. So let's start out like that. So we have our header. And first thing we want to do now is just code our HTML5 header tag. In there, I want to add a level 1 heading and say the coding blog. And then a paragraph. I'll help you become an amazing coder. And we're going to make this paragraph tag a little bit more fancy. We're going to add an emphasis tag within here just so we can make this emphasized. And we're going to give this paragraph the class of tagline, because this paragraph is the tagline of the site, and we can use CSS later to style that tagline a little differently than the rest of the paragraph tags. You could also actually add this as an ID, because you're really only going to have one tagline on the site, so it would make more sense to have it be an ID. Thanks for pointing that out, guys. And now what we're going to do is in the header, we're actually going to add another comment here and say navigation. And this is where we will add the nav tag with an unordered list of some list items that will have A tags within them. So let's set that up first. We got 1, 2, 3. Let's do 3. The first one, we're going to say learn about HTML images, and we're going to have to link that href attribute to images.html. Next up, we're going to say check out HTML headings, and then you guessed it, this is going to link to headings.html. And then last but not least, understand how HTML tables work, and link that up to tables.html. Okay, after your header, we're going to go to the blog articles comment here, and we're going to add a div and give that div the ID of blog-wrapper. And then what I like to do after divs, because they are kind of, like I said, they're meaningless tags. You don't know, you could have many divs in your page and you don't know which div closing tag is for which, because you could literally have multiple div tags. Whoops, not div tags within div tags. And you might just get confused which div tag is closing where, and you might be missing a closing div tag and you're going to get yourself some errors and bugs. So what I like to do after div tags is add a comment right after the closing tag and say end blog wrapper. And that's referencing the ID. And this just lets me see, especially once this gets further down, the page that this closing div tag is for this opening tag. And that's a pretty common coding convention. You'll see that a lot with front-end developers. They will add an end comment to their divs. Okay, in here we're going to add another comment, and that's going to say blog post. And then we're going to use the HTML5 article tag. And let's give that article tag the class of post excerpt. Now, why would I use a class? Because you want to use this class multiple times, because I'm going to have more than one article. And they want to be the same class because I want to style them the same. Within our article, we have a section. I'm going to give that section the class of post head. Again, I'm using class because there's going to be a lot of sections within articles that will have the same styling. So I want to use that class. Let's use level 2 heading and say why you need to learn HTML. Great. After that H2, let's add an M tag. And that's going to say posted on May 8th, 2015. And because we know the time tag, we're going to add time here and close it after the time. And then after the M tag, because it's inline, I'm going to use another inline element, the span tag, so it lines up right beside it. But between there, I'm going to add a bullet using the HTML entity ampersand BULL semicolon. Span tag. In there, I'm going to say by Brad Hussey, and just to give the span tag a bit more meaning and to use CSS later, class author. Okay, and that's the end of that section. We're going to add another section here, and this will be the post content class. And we're just going to use a few, we'll just use some lorem ipsum to fill out this paragraph tag. I have this plugin here called Lipsum. It's going to copy a paragraph of lorem ipsum, paste it in there. At the end, I'm just going to put a couple more periods for an ellipses and then say a tag. And I'm going to link it nowhere because I don't really have anywhere to link to it right now. But read more. You kind of see that often with blog posts. You're going to get an excerpt. And there's a read more link at the end of the excerpt. Okay, let's look to see what this looks like so far. Here we go. It's looking pretty good so far. We've got the header, the tagline, the navigation. We got an article here so far with our read more link. Cool. Oh, and you can see here, the M tag is inline because the span tag is also inline. They stand beside each other. And obviously HTML entities, special characters, are inline elements as well because it's just text, and that will show up like so. Looks pretty cool. Okay, next up. We're just going to add another section to this article. Articles can have many sections, and say post foot. And in there, I'm just going to add a span tag, give it the class of, class of categories. And this is where I'm just going to add some text filed in learn to code. And let's make learn to code strongly emphasized. And that's the category section done. Now let's copy this article and post it one more time, or paste it one more time. There we go. Now we got 2 articles, 2 blog posts. After that, I'm going to move outside of the blog wrapper to the sidebar here and use the aside tag. And I'm going to give that aside tag the ID of primary sidebar because we could be using multiple asides throughout the site. I'm going to make this one uniquely identified to the primary sidebar, and there will only be one primary sidebar. So ID, the use of an ID is okay here. Level 4 heading about this website. I'm just going to copy and paste some lorem ipsum. Again, lorem ipsum is just some filler text. You've probably seen it a lot before, and it's just designers use it a lot just to fill out text because it looks natural and it's good for creating a mock-up. to show your client what the site can look like with real text. Okay, so there we have our aside, and last but not least, we have that footer. Let's go ahead and add that footer tag. And within that footer tag, whoops, there we go. We're going to add a small tag, and that's an HTML tag as well. It's small, and it basically denotes that the text in here is small, and it's kind of a little bit of a styling tag. It actually by default adds a little bit of a style to the text. It makes it smaller. Now, in CSS, you could totally remove that, and then this would just be a semantic tag, meaning this text is small or maybe less important, and you can style it any way you want. But by default, HTML makes it smaller, so we're just going to use that here. We're going to use the copyright HTML entity 2015, Brad Hussey, and there is our footer. Save that. Let's check it out. And there we go. There is our HTML5 project, the coding blog. We added our extra article here. We have the sidebar and we have the footer with the small text. That's really it. It's very simple, but hang in tight because we have a lot more HTML coming your way. It's going to get more advanced. Be thankful that you kind of have a little bit of an easy task at this point. So I'll see you in the next lecture.